All right, all right, all right. Welcome. Happy Wednesday to everybody. Hope everybody's having a good evening. My name is 12 Gauge. I wasn't going to go live tonight, and honestly, honest to God, I was not going to. And then I got talking with an individual who who has strong affiliation to one of the gangs that um is discussed as being part of the hit in the IDAHO4. So I thought I'd bring this gentleman up and we'd have a conversation. That way you could hear it from his own words, his journey through life, and the things that he's been exposed to, and the truth of certain situations where money, guns, drugs, you name it, trap houses, he's been in them. He's been exposed to them. But I don't want to talk. I don't want to tell his story. We're waiting on him. But while we're waiting on him, let me give you the ground rules of the chat if we get anybody in here. Because I know there's a lot going on today because there's been a shift in the YouTube streets. If you could put some roosters and some airplanes in the chat for Cluminati and Truth Not Feelings, let's cover this chat up for them because they were true YouTube creators that had a lot to say. So if you're in the chat, put them up, put the roosters up, put the airplanes up. Let's hear it for those individuals. And the thing about all that's going on in the YouTube streets is I understand what happened. I get what happened. I don't have inside information. But I do know this. He who liveth without sin cast the first stone. I bet nobody would be throwing that stone. Believe you me. Nobody in this community would be throwing that stone. Because we all fall short of the glory. And that's all I got to say about that. So instead of trying to make people accountable on your terms, how about looking in your own mirror? How about having an understanding of where you stand with your issues and your beliefs? You know? Hey, Doc, hey, Aquarius, and anybody else who comes into the chat. Let's put up some roosters and some airplanes for Cluminati and the rooster crew of truth, not feelings. I won't go into their situation anymore because I got plenty to talk about tonight. Um, Let me give you a little bit of history here. You know, as you understand, hey Carla, as you understand, the other day I did a live about cartels, right? Because on these YouTube streets, we keep being told this was a drug house, this was a trap house. Hold on a second, I gotta turn this AC off. It's cold in here. We keep being told that these four kids were some massive drug dealing, money holding individuals, and they were killed because one of their moms snitched. And that is the piece of paper that's being passed around and everybody's co-signing for it. What I can tell you is this. It didn't happen that way. And how am I so sure? Because, like I showed you the other day, cartels don't operate like that. I'm putting in some Flonase if you're wondering. I have like a sore throat, kind of. My head hurts. Hey, Beth, how you doing? Hey, Carla, are you busy? You want to come up on panel while we wait for the individual that gonna come up and talk? Um, but like I'm saying, the cartels have distinctive killing instruments and rituals that they live by. And usually it's rivals that they're taking out. So you have to ask yourself, what rival took them out, and how come there hasn't been any retaliations? Because you know what? There would be retaliations. There'd be retaliations. Most definitely. So that debunks that theory all to hell. Well, what did Maddie tell Adam? I'm sure nobody knows what Maddie told Adam. She took that with her. And Adam's not talking either. So, you know, he's taking that. While we're having some more people in the chat, y'all put in some roosters and some airplanes for Cluminati and truth not feeling. Come on, guys. Let's fill this bad boy up with roosters and airplanes. Come on, y'all can do it. I believe in it. What up, Twizzle? You know, I keep hearing that. I keep hearing that it was a drug house. It was a drug house. It was a drug house. Well, if it was a drug house, where'd all the drugs go? Well, they had 8 hours to clean it up. Okay, in those 8 hours, where'd the money go? Okay, I put the link in the chat for you to come up if you're ready. Where did the money go? Hey, Julianne, where did the money go? And have you ever been inside of a trap house without weapons, without guns? Where did the guns go? Where did the guns go? These are some things that you have to ask yourself when you're looking for facts. Now, if you're looking for fiction, I can tell you fiction. I can tell you they stuffed all the drugs, all the money, all the guns in the tunnels. That's what happened. Or they loaded them up in the water launcher and Brian took off with them when he came back at 9 in the morning. If that's what you, if that's what makes you feel better about it, that's what happened. But I'm going to tell you that did not happen. And here is Kay. Let's give it up for Kay. Carla. Hey Kay, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
That's good to hear. I just took some Flonase and man, my throat is like all a weird feeling. I feel like I can't breathe that well. It's crazy. If I didn't know better, I thought I had COVID, but
Well, don't have COVID.
yeah, I hope not. Anyways, did you hear what I was talking about as far as the trap house?
I heard a little bit and then at the I was trying to come on, so I didn't get to hear all of it.
Okay. Well, I was basically telling the audience about a trap house and the reality versus fiction in this story. Um,
Hmm.
about a trap house having guns, drugs, substantial amount of money, and there'd even been theory that the cartels took these four kids out. What's your thought on that? Anything?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we have to go where you know, I think there's a lot of things being said and taken out of proportion, right? One, was there drugs in the house? You know, and the amount, and I mean, there's going to be so much, right? And it's up to the defense team to try to bring up any reasonable doubt. So sometimes, things get, said, but until we actually go to trial, and I think they set the new trial date now. As I saw it briefly today, I want to say for next year, next June. And the reason why they're doing that is because they want everybody to be kind of out of school, because they know this is going to just cause, a frenzy, in that town. And then they're also fighting for the change of venue. So, I mean, I think there's just a lot going on. I just don't think that, from what we know to be in the affidavits and all that, that any of this is true, but it definitely keeps people talking. And that's kind of what the defense wants, right? People to keep talking. Because, I mean, if you're one of those jurors on, even though you're not supposed to be, sometimes jurors have been known to, listen to social media and be on social media. And, if things like this have already been planted, then, you know, it only works in the defense, and it only works for his defense,
Well, let
but
me ask you a quick question. I didn't mean to cut you off like that. You know how my mind works. Let me ask you a quick question.
sure.
So, how would how would a gang lifestyle be
Hmm.
hidden in small town Idaho, like where nobody would know that that was a trap and you were pushing that much dope? And how would you get it into that house without being seen? I mean,
Hmm.
how would that be possible if you were going to speculate? Would it be possible?
I mean, personally, and this is just one person's opinion, right? I'm only sharing my opinion, and from what everything that we do know, for when we do have actual trap houses and things of that nature, it would be very hard. These are college kids. Did they probably engage in some activity like that? Sure. But that's just giving them the benefit of the doubt, just saying that, yeah. But for it to be a full-blown trap house that somebody else came in and the cartel's involved and all that, I'm going to tell you, the cartel just doesn't move in that way. They are not, they're not going to bring attention to themselves, you know uh, if they're going to do something like that. I mean, and another thing, that neighborhood seems to be pretty tight knit, to the point that, when we think of a trap house, what's happening at the trap house? Think about it. We have a lot of traffic at that trap house. Why? Because people are coming in and they're coming out because they're making that purchase of that particular drug. So that means there's constant traffic there, right? So it seems to me, from what I have seen, now this is my opinion, but from what I have seen, these neighbors around there would have complained about that. That would have been something that it would have been on the radar. And that's something that the cartels don't move like that. They're not going to put a trap house where they know that people are going to complain about it, because when people start complaining, that means more eyes, more patrolling of the cops. That's not what the cartel wants. They want the complete opposite of that, right? So they don't want that. And we know that to be true because they had so many people have gone to the site. It's torn down now, but to that site, when it first happened, there was a lot of people going and just taking pictures and da da da. So whenever the demolition stuff started coming about, the neighbors, the city was like, yes, as long as everybody's okay with it, tear it down. Why? Because of the foot traffic. There was just a lot of people, and people have to live there day in and day out. So when you think about a cartel, the cartel isn't moving small amounts of drugs. When we're talking about the cartel, we're talking about big amounts frequently. So that would have drawn a lot of attention to that particular area. So I mean, just given for that little fact, I don't feel like that's true in this case with them at all. But like I said, this is just my opinion from the things that I have gathered. I just don't feel
Well,
that that had any part
we
in
have
it.
a guest coming on once he gets here that's
Hmm.
going to be able to tell firsthand knowledge. He's lived that life. He's been a part of it. He's
Hmm.
he's ran through the streets. He's been in the streets a long time.
Hmm.
So he's going to be able to give firsthand knowledge of it. I know that we're giving our professional opinion up here, and I respect it. I respect it fully. One other thing that I wanted to ask you or to discuss on the night of the killings, if it was a cartel hit, which we've kind of both in unison on that it more than likely wasn't. How would they have been able to control all the people from coming and going to that house? You noticed that there was noise complaint. The cops were showing up at all times. There was cops down by the band field. I mean, there was all kinds of opportunities for law enforcement to bust that house if it was running that much drugs. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. It was. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of what we go back to, right? When a cartel's gonna pick a trap house or something like that, they're going to pick a house where no one cares how much in and out traffic is coming. You know, they're gonna pick them, in kind of the rougher neighborhoods, because I mean, your people aren't going and trafficking. Cops aren't, hanging out. I mean, they're not gonna pick somewhere where cops are always hanging out at. you know
Right.
and so that just kind of goes along with the theory as to why I feel like, like no, I mean, they're not gonna do those things. They're just, it wasn't the ideal thing. Now, another thing that the cartel does do, and we know this to be true for the past, right? So we're judging everything on the past. Can the cartel, make a 180 and completely change? Sure. But from what we know in the past is the cartels, they take credit for their killings. They let it be known who it was. Like everyone in the street is gonna know. They let it be known who it was. So they're not gonna come in and just do one massive killing of all of these kids, and not take credit for it. They're gonna take credit for it. I mean, especially if it's the cartel, because if we're talking about the cartel, well, I mean, the cartel, we're talking, they would come in and do this and leave. You
Well,
know?
to answer your question or your statement, Twizzle, you're right. The university does get drugs in there somehow, but we're talking about major shipments, okay? I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking major shipments. We're not talking about ounces. We're not talking about that. That's a big shipment for a small town, I would think. A couple of ounces, maybe 5, 10 ounces. That'd be a big shipment, maybe more. but we're talking massive weight and massive amounts of money. And,
Hmm.
I believe that the reason that people associate the cartels or any other kind of gang to be able to do this type of crime is they place the emphasis of the mothers because, the mothers were
Hmm.
indicted on drug charges and manufacturing and delivering. Well,
Hmm.
manufacturing and delivering does not mean a lot of times big amounts. I mean, you could get a Mandel charge. What is it? 4 to 200 ounces or something like that. Isn't that a
Hmm.
Mandel charge?
Yeah, I
Something
think you're
like
right.
that. Yeah. So, I mean, it goes from 4 ounces to 200 ounces. I mean,
Mhm.
you could get a Mandel charge. So, to get a manufacturing and delivery charge, it has to be up there way, it could go from 4 ounces to a bunch of weight.
Yeah.
My question to you is this: anybody that has the mindset that this was a drug hit, who was the opposition? So if they took these
Hmm.
4 kids out, who stepped up in their place? That
Hmm.
would be known instantly. Because you take 4 out, 4 people pop up like weeds. 4 people are gonna pop up and they're gonna take their place. You're gonna know who these new 4 people are in town because they're gonna be running things, they're gonna be calling the shots, they're gonna be doing all this, that, and the other. It's not gonna be a silent thing. As little as that town is, as what I've read, you would know who the heavy hitters were. It wouldn't be a secret.
Yeah. And I think too, you brought up a really interesting point. Is going to be, the quantity. When we're talking about the cartels, okay, the cartels are not going to come and kill somebody over a couple of ounces of weed. I mean, I mean, why risk their organization and to do that for such a low quantity? Now, if it was a massive shipment, and that's kind of like what we're trying to talk about, right? Like if we're going to talk about it, we're going to say that the cartel, then let's talk about when the cartel's going to get involved. The cartel would get involved if it was massive amount. If it was, close to $1 million worth of product, something that would cause a dent into them. But a small amount, they're not going to come guns blazing for that. What for? Why bring attention to themselves for whatever it was, what we allege was there or not there. I mean, the fact that people, just because people have a past history and have had past convictions, of that, we don't we those cases, while they are in correlation, they are not in causation. So what I mean by correlation is that they're just running on a parallel street right along with it. So and so's mom was whatever, but it's just a correlation. And I think sometimes people they get that mixed up and they want to say that it's a causation. No, that it's not a causation, it's just a simple correlation. So that would be like saying that the thing that I like when I'm describing correlation and causation, what I like to use is the summertime. In the summertime, the ice cream sales go up, but so does crime. Who consumes the ice cream? It's a bunch more likely it's going to be kids that consume the ice cream, and the crime is going up. So that's like saying these kids in the summertime, when they get out of school, they're out here committing all these crimes, because we know that the crime rate goes up and so does ice cream sales go up. That doesn't happen. Why?
Well, you're
It's a
right.
parallel. It's a
You're right.
parallel,
Well,
and the kids are being,
we're being generalized right
yeah,
now. So don't take our statements as carte blanche. Don't
right.
take our statements as being concrete. Okay, because if you're open minded, then we can be open minded too with the chat. And I like to be that way because you never know what you might learn from somebody else. But unless the person is here telling me the thing that you're representing in a statement, I have to hear it or see it for myself before I believe it. So a lot of you are the same way. That's why it's so hard for people to understand our understanding of this is because we're coming from a LE point of view. You say the LE was in their pockets. Well, how it works is when it comes to a situation, you said they ordered a hit on some dude's wife's mom, right? So you say, okay, we ordered that hit. So we're not just going to take out the wife's mom. We're going to take out anybody that knows about this. So anybody that falls out of line, they're going to get clipped too. So these LEs that supposedly are in their pockets, eventually you're going to start hearing about officers dying out of the blue or mysterious deaths or anything like that. So, I mean, I'm open to a lot of theories. I really am. But this one is really, it's hard for me to stand on because I've seen and I've worked with people that actually live that life. So it's hard for me unless, like Carla or Kay said, unless they've changed up their, unless your definition of cartel and my definition of cartels are totally different. Your definition of cartel is Emma Bailey and Demetrius, then I could possibly see it. I could see it that way. I could see that. But they're not cartels. They are runners, meaning they're pushers. They're holding the product down the line. So when you're talking about drug organizations, there's people at the very top that call the shots and everybody else falls in line. If you're talking about low level users or addicts that are used to go take it to commit crimes or to kill people or whatever, I get that. That could be a possibility. But cartels usually have their own hitmen. They have their own assassins. They have one guy that they use or a couple that take care of their business. Because the less people that you have involved, the less people you have to worry about that are going to turn on you. And that's what this whole game is about. Are you up here again? Where'd you go?
I'm up here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's another Carla down here.
Oh, no, that's not me. I think that's somebody else.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're up here. Hold on a second.
Hey,
Hi. You made it up here. Hello.
it was an ordeal, definitely.
Wow, nice to see you up here, Carla. There's another Carla. Kay.
Yeah, I think probably when you said Carla, the thing is in the chat. She probably clicked it thinking you were talking to her, and
Oh my
instead you
I'm
were talking to me.
It's
I'm
fine.
so sorry. I will leave.
No, you're good. Give us your take on this.
Okay.
Do you have any understanding of whether or not it would have been like a gang hit or a cartel hit on these four students?
I don't think, personally, in my opinion, that it had to do with them selling drugs or buying drugs. I'm sure that they were involved in the recreational part of partaking in it, but I think it had a lot to do with other individuals and not that.
Okay. So, how long have you been following the case, Carla?
Ever since it came out, it fascinated me over how the police had handled it.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. I guess that's why so many of us have that inability to let go. Sometimes we have that inability to just not want to keep talking about it, keep digging.
Right.
I mean,
Carla,
it
what's your background? Are you just are you educated? Do you have any education over like a criminal justice degree, or tell us what's your background?
I have family members that are in the
What's your background though?
nothing official, nothing that I went and strived for and achieved.
Well,
Just,
that's good though. That's good.
Yeah,
yeah,
because then you have a different take on it. That's okay.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I have family members that are police officers, family members that are lawyers. So,
Have
yeah.
you discussed this with them? Do they have any input as far as what they believe?
Well, I have a healthy respect for anyone that puts their life out on the line on a daily basis. But in the same aspect, there are good cops that are out there that are trying to uphold the law and protect. But then there are bad cops that do the opposite. And that happens more often than the good cops, unfortunately.
Right, right. Just like any profession, we have good and bad people that either do their job the way they're supposed to, or we have people that get burned out and they start taking shortcuts, you know?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, we all can understand that you know, it's not necessary. Sometimes it's not necessarily intentional, but you know, it could be. I can't speak for any of the bad cops, you know, but I'm pretty certain that they didn't start out being a bad cop. They probably had every intention on saving the world. That's why they got into the field, and for whatever reason, they
Well,
started. Go ahead.
Carla, before you get into that, I'm gonna give you some homework. I'm gonna give you some homework, okay? This is what I want you to do. And
Okay.
when you get it done, you got to come back and you got to tell us, okay?
All
So,
right.
I want you to talk to your people that you know are attorneys about this case. Just get a feel for what they tell you. You know, just get a feel. Don't you offer up anything, okay? Just get a feel for their true opinion of, hey, legally, you know, how is this looking, you know, and you try to keep your your opinions to yourself. Don't give away anything. And then I want you to talk to your cop friends and do the same. You know, again, you know, don't give away anything. Don't try to say, well, my cop friend so and so said this, or my attorney friend so and so said this. Like, don't give it away that you're talking to them about it, right? And then just come back to us. I'm so interested to hear what a lawyer's take would be on it versus a cop's take on the case, on this specific subject. I mean, it doesn't matter, but it's so interesting that you have, you know, friends or relatives, you know, on both sides of the coin. And I'm very curious to see what an attorney versus a cop would say. But if you take on this challenge that I'm giving you, this homework that I'm trying to give you, trying to convince you to do it, what in order for you to get really good data or a really good sense is that you've got to keep this a secret. You can't tell them vice versa, because we want to have that discussion here on the channel. You know, we want you
Right.
to come back and report to us, and then we want to dive in as to why would the attorney say that versus why would the cop say that. I think that would be so interesting if you wanted to take me up on that homework, you know. And I would definitely, Marty, if she does this, you have got to set it up. And I mean, I have got to be back on the panel because I'm so interested to hear.
All right.
Well, I do know this. Cops are like a family. They have each other's back. And when a cop does something wrong and they know that they were in the wrong, sometimes they drag the good cops involved in it. And then they that are trying to uphold the law are the ones that take the downfall for something that somebody else did. And it happens a lot. And cops have to be a family. They have to take care of each other. Just like when you are practicing law and you're a lawyer, there are certain guidelines that you have to control and be a part of, regardless of the fact that you are a lawyer and you want the truth and justice to come out, the cops have to uphold the law and make sure that it's justice and not someone getting accused that didn't have anything to do with it.
Okay, does anybody else want to come up on panel and discuss this while we wait on my friend to get get where he needs to be? He's like stuck in the middle of nowhere. I might be able to get him on the telephone to be able to talk over the microphone, but he's running a little late. Carla number one, I guess that the other one's K. So Carla, let me ask you a question. You've been following this since the beginning, just like a lot of us, and there's been a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns and things that don't make sense, and a lot of well, it could be this, it could be that. In your lifetime, have you ever seen another case as like this? I mean, have you ever experienced a murder situation that has had as many obstacles as this one has?
You talking to me?
Yes.
Not as brutally done for individuals to be cut down in the prime of their life and the way that it was done and how it was done. That is a new thing.
Right, right. Hey, you guys
And
in the chat, can you put in some roosters and some airplanes for Cluminati and Truth Not Feelings? Let's light it up for them, guys. Let's light it up for them. You're right, Carla. It is brutal, and that's what makes it so awful. Is sometimes we get into that brutality, and we forget that these individuals were just kids.
exactly.
I mean, we get so fixated on the potential suspect that we forget the victims, and that is what's so frustrating to me. It's almost like their memory has been forgotten, and we focus on whether this guy is innocent or guilty, and that should not be. That should not be, in my opinion. I don't know about y'all too, but that should not be.
It's a small police department and you're going to have mistakes. And a lot of these policemen are not trained to handle such a case like that that's that involved, especially if you're coming from a small community that's not ever handled a case like that. So you're going to have mistakes and you're going to have cops not doing what they're supposed to do because honestly, they are not trained in a lot of cases to perform what they need to do as far as roping off the scene, making sure that everyone that was there, their names and address and phone numbers, and interviewed properly and correctly, and making sure that no one entered the house and left the house without proper gear on. There's a lot about it that the cops, unfortunately, are going to get hammered on.
Yes.
Well, I think here's the thing, though, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate for just a minute. When you enter a profession, you're trained. You're trained. So I kind of tend to disagree with that. I don't care how big the department is or how small the department is. The thing about it is that they're trained. If it was the case, then Carla wouldn't have been able to just list off everything that they should have done, because everything that she listed off should have done, and that's common knowledge to anyone.
Exactly.
So, let's not, I don't feel like we need to talk about, how big or how small this is, blah, blah, blah. And to go into that, just to play devil's advocate for a little bit, yes, we have seen killings like this before. We sure have. We've seen all of those massive killings, all of those school shootings. So yes, we have seen younger people lose their lives. Because let's get one thing straight. By definition, now I have a master's in criminal justice. So I am confident when I speak. And what I'm about to tell you guys is something that me and Marty, I just actually just texted Marty right before his show that started. And I asked him the question, is this guy a serial killer? The answer to that is no. This guy is not a serial killer. He is a mass killer. So we have seen this type of killing before. We have. We've seen it publicly. Maybe in a very long time, this is the first time a mass killer has done it in a residential, in a home setting. But this particular person is a mass killer by definition, not a serial killer. So we have seen this before. We have seen it. And with the police departments, that's like I'm also a veteran. So that's like when I hear people make those kind of statements, it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, are you then saying that the United States Army trained me for combat, but since I didn't go to combat, then therefore I didn't really know what I was doing? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, period. That means that when people get trained, you get trained. You can't sit there and go, well, they just weren't capable. No, what do you mean? They may not have had the capabilities to bring in, forensics at a sooner or things like that, because maybe that department didn't have access to some of the resources, but that the police officers, no, no, absolutely not. They were trained. They were trained. They were trained to handle something like this. And that's just the way that it is. Did they probably make mistakes? Well, there's mistakes in every single case that goes out there, every single one, no matter how big or how small the police department is. But we're not going to sit here and say that we're going to give them a pass. I'm not going to give anybody a pass on this. We're not going to say that we have never seen this type of killing, because we have. He is a mass killer. That's all that it is. By definition, he is a mass killer. Period. End of story. We can't say that he was a serial killer. Now we can sit here and speculate and say, hey, if he would not have been caught, if it wasn't for the investigation and the way that it went about, if he wouldn't have been caught, would this man have killed again? It's your guess or mine. But mine is, if it was so brutal this time, he probably would have done it again. And then at that point, maybe, yeah, he would have gained, the notoriety of being a serial killer. But at this point, it's a mass killing. And we have absolutely have seen it. We've seen it in Texas with Uvalde. So yeah, we've seen it. You guys, we just haven't seen it it maybe the residential part is what's maybe throwing people off. But regardless of where it takes place, this man was a mass killer, not a serial killer. And absolutely, we've seen it before. And that's just my take. Now, I'm just playing devil's advocate with what I know, but that's just my take on it.
Well,
And
you can be trained, but make several mistakes.
yeah.
And that is the case with this.
Well,
Yeah, yeah,
I believe also that some of the information that people have gone by in this case, since it was gagged so early on, is
Exactly. Hmm.
a lot of the photos and a lot of people's critiquing law enforcement and the forensic teams, and not understanding the protocols and the procedure that take place whenever you're investigating a criminal scene, a crime scene. So whenever you don't understand the process, you're going to critique it, because you critique what you don't understand because you're trying to find understanding. But it's never fair to critique the individual doing their job. I think that's what you were trying to say, is that, it's kind of like if somebody came into my office and said, you know what, you're a crappy therapist because I just heard you talk to that kid and you didn't get onto him one time for him telling you he was still using, or he was still committing criminal acts. You're just a crappy therapist. How can you even tell yourself that you're licensed, or that you even went to school or anything like that? just based on observation, that's not fair to the professional. And
Yeah.
and I
Well,
believe
see,
that's what
but
you were
here's
trying to express. I might be off key there. I might be off key.
no, I think, but here's the difference, right? Here's the difference. We know what we know because they're only letting us know so much, right? So I'm just putting this as a huge example. So if they
Hmm.
say, and they didn't, right? This is totally fabricated what I'm about to say, guys. So let's say that they say that we found a gun at the scene. Okay, now we know that that's not true, and we know that I'm lying. But let's say that they say we found a gun, and then we're sitting here. We can speculate about that gun, and people can say whatever they want to say. But what they didn't say is there more guns. We know that there was one because that's all that they're telling us. But we don't know is if there was any more. And I think that's kind of like where the speculation comes into play with a case like this, is that we don't know that these trained professionals made mistakes. We don't know that because we won't
Exactly.
know that
Well,
until the trial, because they're not saying everything. They're not saying all of it. Now, one big thing, right, that we know is that the FBI, before they demolished the house, the FBI went into that house. And what was the FBI doing inside that house? Is that they were making a model of it. But what had happened before that? Before that, there was a lot of demolition by the people. So even if you wanted to reconstruct what happened that night, that opportunity was gone. It was gone because the walls aren't there anymore, and this was when the FBI was there. So the walls weren't there anymore. The structure was still there. When they walked in, the structure was still there, but the inside of it, a lot of things were missing. A lot of
Right.
things were missing. And
Because
so
they
then
took the walls for blood splatter.
they did. There you go. So
Yep.
here's the deal, right? So you can't reconstruct it. So the thing about it is that sometimes it's key things. All that FBI saw what was left, which at that point, they really couldn't reconstruct a whole lot of it. So at that point, do we keep the structure or do we let it go? I mean, it didn't matter. Now his defense team went into the home as well too,
Right.
before it was demolished. So that's just the thing, when we're speculating about all this, is that we may know one piece of the pie, one very small piece of the pie, but they didn't say one way or another if that was the absolute piece of the pie. So we don't know, and like I said, just going back to the made up scenario that I just made up, that if is that the only gun? Was there more guns? What
Mm-hmm.
type of gun was that? We don't know. So there's a lot to it that we don't know. That whenever we're going to look at things like this from the criminal point of view, right? From the
Right.
law point of view, you know,
Right.
there isn't we don't know, and we won't know until the trial and until there's that discovery. Now there's a possibility that this may not even go to trial, because if he turns around and he says, you know what, I plead guilty, I there's enough here, I don't want to, or they struck up a deal, we may never know what would have been in that discovery. I mean, they're not even talking about, this case isn't even going to go to trial until June 2025 is when it's projected to go to trial. And in between there's right now they're fighting for venue. They're trying to see if they can to get a change of venue, which more than likely I would assume it may happen. So there's just a lot. I mean, when you look at it, did the cops make mistakes? I don't know that they did, to be honest, but I do have confidence in law enforcement, whether law enforcement is a part of a small police department or a big police department, because they all have the same basic training when we're talking about that. So I mean, as a citizen, for me, I have confidence. I have confidence in the fact that they knew what they were doing when they were collecting it. Are they going to make mistakes? Well, yeah, there's going to be mistakes. I mean, we're humans. There's always going to be mistakes, but
So,
we won't
so
know
let
if
me
there's
ask
real
you.
mistakes until after.
Let me ask you this question for both of you. if we're if we're getting back on topic about the cartels or the gang affiliation hit, would they have left the two surviving roommates? If you're
No,
going in there,
I don't think so.
if you're going in there to, let's say not even to kill, let's just say for speculation, you're going in there to shake things up because that's what you were hired for, and it went too far, and you killed four people. What made you leave the other two alive?
Exactly.
You're not
Good
going
question.
to. Good, you're not going to. If it's a cartel, you're not going to. You're not going to leave any witnesses, you know. But then again, to do a massive killing, the cartels would have to be highly motivated to come into, you know, when we're talking about, you know, cartels, you're coming into either from another country or another state, or you're coming
Hold on a
into.
second. Hold on a second, Kay. Brianna, I've heard that all day today in a lot of different um, panels. Can you tell me where they were if they weren't there? I mean, because if they weren't there, where were they? And how did they give witness testimony if they weren't there? You know what I mean? Like, how was how was that witness testimony given? Because if she lied and they find that out, that's a crime. That's a crime. So by now she would have been arrested. Either one of them if they weren't there.
But Bethany has exculpatory evidence. The defense said so, so who knows what Bethany knows?
Right. But what I'm saying is if either one of them weren't there while the commission of the crime was happening, and then they gave statements as to falsifying who they just gave a blanket description of a person, 5'10" or taller, um, not muscular but athletic build with bushy eyebrows. Let's say she just threw that out of her butt, okay? And she wasn't there and they find out, that's a crime. That's a crime. They would have arrested her by now. And I'm sure they've interviewed her more than one time with different agencies. They would have arrested her by now and the other one if they were lying.
Well, a lawyer never asks a question that they don't already know an answer to it.
But
Just like a cop,
she would have been interviewed by the police first and the
well, just
FBI.
like a cop will interrogate an individual by saying a lie in order to get to the truth.
But what reason would the FBI have to get her to lie? I mean, I can probably roll with you on the MPD could have forced her to say something. But what would, you know, all the agencies that interviewed these people, all the people that interviewed them, you're telling me all of them got them to lie?
Maybe it was to find out if they had involvement.
I don't know. I don't know. But I believe that it was a thorough investigation. I believe that, yes, there were some young, inexperienced officers on the force. There were people thrown into positions that they shouldn't have been thrown into positions if they weren't ready for it. But you know, oftentimes when you take a job like that in the social services field, they don't give you time to land on your feet. A lot of times they just say, okay, get in there and do the best you can. I know that most of the places where I was training, and I wasn't an officer, but I've been in the social services field where I've just been thrown into places where they say, okay, do the best you can. You know what you're doing. I don't know about you, Kay, but have
Mhm.
you had that happen to you?
No,
No?
no.
Well, you're
Mm-mm.
lucky. You're
No,
lucky. I've been thrown into
I think there's always a baseline, right? So
yeah.
our education gives us the baseline. Our theories and everything, you know, we have our baseline. And then when you go and you apply, you know, with whatever agency or anything like that, you are expected to then say, hey, like you're saying, you know, hey, go off and conduct, therapy, and with your first client, you're like, what's going on? I didn't get trained for this. Well, we're professionals. We don't get trained.
Right.
A lot of the times you don't get trained because you're supposed to be doing that at the school. So depending on, and that's why a lot of the times, Marty, it goes back to whenever we're training professionals. We're talking about the social services, so I'm not talking about cops, and I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about
Right.
social
Right.
services, which I'm a master level social worker as well. So a lot of the times, the school gives you that baseline. So it
Right.
does matter where you get your education from, because if you decided to get a shortcut education and you went to an online university that no one has heard of, and you get your degree that way, and then you go to your first job and they're telling you, hey, well, you've got the degree, now do it, and you don't know what you're doing, that's when
Mhm.
you really question, I just got into debt and I didn't know what I was doing. So that's why I'm with confidence saying, no, I've never been put in that situation, because where I studied, where I got my master's with West Texas A&M University. I mean, it was very thorough. We had internships that we had to do. I had to do 2 years of internships basically out in the world doing what I do.
Hands-on
So I had that
experience.
baseline. So I had that baseline was there.
Right.
Now as an educated woman, I go into my first job as educated. Now I'm there to get my experience. Now I'm there to refine, retune, redo those things, but does it feel like I got thrown in there? Well, probably, but you know what? You dig real deep, and you have the training for it. We
Right.
just sometimes get nervous as professionals going into
Yeah.
our first job. But did you get thrown in there? No, you didn't get thrown in there. You were ready for it. You were
And you
ready
make
for it.
mistakes sometimes.
Well,
Absolutely.
I did internships also, and I mean, at the time, that's how I felt, but over
But
time, I
it
got
was a
more confident.
feeling. But you were prepared. You were
Yes,
prepared.
over
There you
time,
go.
I got more confident. Let me
Good.
answer this question right here because I answered this question last night on my live last night. If you weren't here, Brianna, I'm going to answer this question for you right now. Okay? It says, if exculpatory evidence, why would Brian be still in jail? The only reason that Brian is still in jail, it does not have anything to do with the evidence. It has to do with he doesn't have a bail. If he had a bail and he was able to pay it, he would be a free man walking amongst us until his trial. That's the
Hmm.
only reason he's still in jail. Has nothing to do with the evidence, has nothing to do with what they've shown, what they haven't shown. So that's the answer to that. There's not any other reason. No other reason. As Americans, we're granted bail, and people say, "Well, you don't get bail on a death penalty case." Well, there was a capital murder that happened in Houston, where they murdered a 12-year-old little girl, and they got $10 million bail, both of them. So it differs for a lot of people, and that was capital murder. That's the highest of the high, right? His is
Hmm.
first degree. His is first degree. So if he had received bail and he would have been able to make the 10%, then Brian would be a free man walking amongst us. And for everybody's sake, I hope that you are right if you say he's innocent, because if he was walking amongst us and he killed again, how bad would you feel for other people's families? Would you still be convinced? That's all I got to
Yeah.
say. I mean, that's all I'm saying. And I'm not trying to be one sided or not. I'm just saying you have to ask yourself these questions
Yeah.
because,
And it goes to say like this, Marty. It goes to say like one thing that the listeners have to kind of keep in mind, right? And that is why probation and parole have such a delicate jobs. And sometimes they get it wrong. It's because for the example that you just gave, so all of that pressure goes onto this judge. Okay, because at this point, when we're talking about probation and parole, there has been a conviction. But at this point, at this level where he's at right now, there is no conviction. So that judge has to set that bail, and he has to consider everything. He has to consider what and that's something that we're not a privilege to, right? We only know what they want us to know at this point. But what was presented to that judge in chambers, and what strong evidence does the prosecution have against this individual? Because if they came in, and I'm sure that they did, guns blazing, here's what we've got, then that judge has the responsibility to keep somebody like that off of the streets. So the bail would be either a no bail, or it would be an extreme high bail, because for that reason right there. Because if something happens, and let's go back. I said that he's a mass killer, right? But the only reason why he's a mass killer is because he got caught after this first incident. Because this is an incident with, multiple fatalities, but it is one incident, right? Textbook wise, right? We may feel otherwise and have other opinions, but textbook wise, if he had the urge to do that, and then he turned around and he did it in your neighborhood, at your house, what would you say then? We can't, at some point, we can't just say, these people, or maybe he's innocent or not. But when a judge sends such a strong message to where he's got to protect us, and they're setting a high bail or a no bail, there is, believe me, there is reason, because that judge also has to answer to somebody else as to why he did that. He's not going to do a no bail on a kid that got caught with 1 ounce of weed. I mean, yeah, what? I mean, you know, it, we're not going to do that. We're going to give the guy a reasonable bail, and he's going to go on his way and get out. But I think that's very interesting on how you brought that up, Marty, because you're absolutely right. When you stop to think about it, before you go run around saying, I think he's innocent, I think he's innocent. Well, one, we don't know that he's innocent because we haven't heard everything. But we do know that the judge has made quite a bit of an impact. I don't know what his bail is. I can't recall, or if he has a no bail. But if he has the resources to come up with, or the Ada Murlock case, that was a high bail, and he posted that bail, and he came out. You know, it comes down to it, is we have to protect the citizens. We have to protect other people while we're going to let this person walk among us. Because I'm going to tell you right
Well,
now, as a female, I wouldn't want him walking among us.
well, this question says, same goes for the families. How would they feel to find out later that he is innocent, and what if he's been sentenced to death? Well, I can tell you on that, there's numerous appeals before the final sentence of death is
Yeah.
applied to whoever it is. You just don't get sentenced once. It's automatically appealed, and it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. And when you run out of appeals, that's a lot of court that you've gone through. Not all of them could have been wrong. You get what I'm saying? Or let's say that this one finds you guilty and the appellate court finds you innocent. Well, guess what? You're innocent. They've overturned the conviction. So,
Well, I think that there was enough evidence that they knew that he had either done it or he had enough involvement in it that they didn't want to set a bail for him because of setting someone out on the streets that may have done it or may have been involved, and that's why the judge didn't set a bail.
and you know what else, guys? I think y'all don't understand this portion of it. The prosecuting attorney, which is Mr. Bill Thompson, at any point in time, he feels that he doesn't have the supportive evidence that's going to go in his narrative to prove that Mr. Koberger is guilty. He can tell the judge, I rule for a dismissal based on
Mhm.
my ability to see that there's not enough evidence to convict this man of this crime, of these 4 crimes. At any time, he can step in and say that. So our justice system is created more for our freedom than it is for our conviction. And I don't know where it got turned around in people's head that the witch hunt is out to get everybody. I just don't understand that. I mean, If you really understand the justice system, it's set up in checks and balances so that you can have the opportunity to maintain your freedom every step of the way.
Well, I think the reason people feel that way, 12 gauge, is because there's been too many people that have been put in jail on false accusations and spend more than half their life in jail on something that they didn't even do or involved in. And I think that
And
people have a bad taste in their mouth toward law enforcement because of that.
And then, but to piggyback, right? Let's put it in perspective. Let's put it in perspective for just a minute. So when those people, because there have been, Carla, you're right. There have been. I agree with you. There have been people that have been put in the prison system and has spent, half of their lives, and then something exonerates them. Okay, but wait, think about it. We can't hold what happened in the past to the caliber of technology that we have today, right? Because back then, back in the day when Bob over here was didn't do the crime, but everything fit or whatever, they didn't have DNA. They didn't have blah 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 blah. And that is why Marty is bringing up the point that the justice system is made every step of the way for you to gain to if we've made a mistake because maybe the technology when you were convicted did not exist, and now this technology exists, and now this technology could possibly exonerate you, then yes, you go move forward and we move towards exonerating you if that was the case, right? But were those people mean people, or were they out to get the witch hunt because they convicted you, 25 years ago, 30 years ago? Well, no, because at that time they did what they thought was right for with the technology and the information that they had at hand. I mean, even cell phone services now and the pinging and all of that technology has evolved. So it's not fair to say, right, that because someone was exonerated today over a crime that happened 20 years ago, we failed them. No, we didn't fail them. We didn't fail them. They were able to get their freedom back because technology arose. And a lot of those cases, it was the DNA. A lot of the when we go back and we look at historically the people that were prosecuted and convicted and were there waiting, that's why we don't turn around, like Marty brought up that a very good point. Marty said, it's not like you get the death sentence and next week, sayonara, buddy, you're out of this world. That's not how it works. They sit in death row for a long period of time because there's time that goes through where they can. If something like that happens and we are able to prove that this person didn't commit the crime, then they didn't commit the crime and they're able to walk out of there. There have been people that have walked straight out of death row,
Correct.
but not
After
because
they have lost
all of their
the
life,
many years
the
of
many years that
seeing their
we can't
kids
give
grow
them
up
back.
or whatever
They've
else. Yeah.
lost it all. They have
Yep.
lost it all. And I agree with you, Carla. They have lost it all. And there is nothing that we can do to give that back to them. They've lost it,
When that
period.
does happen, though, guys, when that does happen, and nothing can give you back time. Time is the most
Yeah.
precious thing that we have on this earth. Time and freedom. But they monetarily, you know, cut
Yes.
them a check and say, well, I'm sorry, we are bad. And that's not right. I don't agree with that. Okay. But to also be fair is how many people have been let free and gone on to commit even more heinous crimes. You get what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
hear people that have escaped the prison, and instead of going and doing some, I mean, not that you can do anything productive escaping, but instead of doing something to not harm others, what the first thing they do? They go carjack and kill somebody for their car. They break into a house and kill the whole family who had nothing to do with it. I mean, it's not a perfect system. I get it.
No.
Well, here's another example of the technology in DNA. In 1994, if I'm not correct, O.J. Simpson committed a murder but was found innocent. DNA pointed his direction every which way, from a trail of blood all the way to his vehicle, from his vehicle to his house. He had both mixtures of the victim's blood in with his blood, but yet he was
And
set
why?
free.
And why was he?
You're
Why
right.
was he?
You're right.
Why? But why did that happen? Why did that
The
happen?
well, they wanted to pinpoint or point at the police officers and police department
No.
not doing their jobs correctly. That was made a point of. But
Okay, but why did that happen? Why did that happen? Years later, 20 years later, right before the man died, right before O.J. Simpson died.
he
When you
committed
put
another crime
no,
by
no, let me listen. Hear me out. Hear me out. Right before this man, 20 to 25 years, they started polling the jurors and started really asking them, how did you guys come to the conclusion that O.J. Simpson didn't commit this crime? What happened right before O.J. Simpson? Rodney King. And so the people were mad. And when you get jurors, and it's just people, if you go in there with a bias, then you're going to judge whatever case is in front of you with that bias. So if you're not educated, because that's what we work out. Marty can tell you, and I can tell you, we work that out in college. That's why we're educated. We work out our biases in that system. So hopefully we come out and we are not biased people. But members of the jury don't have that kind of training. They're just people of the peer. So what happened right before that? Multiple jurors on the O.J. Simpson said that was payback for Rodney King.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
they
why
did
they
say
found
that.
him. That's why they found him innocent. So that's what Marty's trying to say, is that we don't have the perfect system, because there is flaws. There is flaws. So to
do
bring
you
up O.J.
think that
Simpson,
Brian Koberg's going to have an unbiased jury?
it could be, of course, of
I
course.
mean,
There's
it
always
depends.
going to be
It
people that
depends
are going to
on.
have
Hey,
bias. You no.
I would say it depends on the the thermometer of the community, whether they're against outsiders. I mean, because small communities are tight knit. You know, a lot of times they don't like people that come in from other areas and violate their people. You know, but
Yeah.
Do you
not that
think Howard Bloom's book and other reports on other books, do you think that's helped the public opinion?
I would hope not. I would hope not.
I
I
would
would
hope
hope
not.
that they find jurors that are very viable, that are objective, that have their wits about them, where they don't have their emotional bias towards one way or the other. Because, like I said, if he gets convicted, he has the opportunity to automatically appeal it. So they're not going to kill him right off the bat, okay?
If
And
Brian Koberger was your son, do you think he would get him a fair trial?
No.
If Okay.
if he was my son,
No.
Yeah, if he was your son, do you think Brian would get a fair trial? Do you think your son, if your son did what Brian is accused of and in jail for, do you think that he would get a fair trial?
well, I believe that there's a reason why his family isn't at the court hearings. Because
Okay.
if my son was in that position, I would be at every court hearing. I would be at every disposition. I would be at everything, no matter how much it cost me, if I believed that my son was innocent. There's a reason why they're not there. None of the family is there. So that tells more than anything. I mean, if his own family doesn't show up, but he showed up to, take him across the country during the holiday, that tells a lot.
Well, there could be many reasons why his family's not there. Maybe they don't want the
Would you would
harassment.
would you show up for your
I
child?
would show up for my child, yes. But you
Regardless,
show up for
regardless,
Brian Koberger and
I
you've
would
got
show
all
up.
the other families there that was
I would show
their
up. I would
kids
show up.
victims
I would
of what
show up.
your child's being accused of.
I would show
Would
up because
you?
you know what?
Okay.
He
Okay.
needs he needs the support. If he
Okay.
is true, if I believe that my son's innocent, we don't know what kind of conversation went on the way back from Pullman.
Howard
that.
Bloom does.
I haven't read the book, so I don't know. Don't spoil it for me.
Okay,
But
okay.
but I mean, we don't know if
Mhm.
Brian confessed to Dad, or maybe he said some things that were non-exculpatory in his favor, that were culpable, that made him more viable for this crime than not. We don't know whether he said, Dad, I got to tell you something. I blah, 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 blah. And I'm not starting a rumor here. I'm just saying we don't know what happened on that ride home.
But
Mhm.
So,
Howard Bloom started a rumor. Howard Bloom has
And
well,
that
put
and
it
I
in
that's
a
mean,
book.
why, Carla, and that's
he-
why it's going to be hard when
Exactly.
cases go this
Hmm.
famous. When cases go this famous, because everybody, us, we're doing it now. we're
Yep.
we're talking we're talking, and we're speculating, and we're doing this. I mean, and that's why, like, I think, like, whenever I come up on panel or whatever, for me, I always I always explicitly say, like, if it is completely my opinion, or if it is something that I know for a fact to be a book. And that's why, whenever I talk, I'll remind everybody, I'm saying this because of this is the degree that I have, and then that's something that I know to be concrete, to be true. So, but whenever you have a case like this, it's going to be hard. Now, what is everyone doing to help him? They're waiting till 2025 to even have the trial.
Hmm.
They're also petitioning to change the venue. I mean, there is only so much. Sure, of picking this up and going and having it in another country, there's not much that we can do. I mean, we're already gonna wait. It's not like we're bringing him to court tomorrow and convicting this
right,
guy tomorrow. But
right.
psychologically, talking from a psychology point of view, Marty is absolutely correct. When you don't have the support, guilty or innocence, when no one of your family shows up, there is a big reason why. Big reason why. We can only sit here and talk till we turn blue in our faces as to why that family has chosen not to support this man, but they
Right.
have chosen not to support this man.
But it would be us speculating in our opinions on
And
why
in our
they.
opinions, yeah. But
Yes.
there's a reason. But the fact is that he's standing alone. That's a fact. He's standing alone. They haven't shown up for him thus far. The trial hasn't happened. And maybe at the trial he's going to have, his entire, everybody's going to be there, from great grandma to great auntie to whoever. you know that could be true.
But let me
But
ask you guys in the chat right quick. Still, I get your point. I get your point. Point taken. I understand they went to Zoom, but you love this is your son. This is your son. This is your brother. I have a brother. I have parents. I have all kinds of family members still, by the grace of God. If they were ever arrested and accused, Zoom or not, I'm going to be right there behind them, letting them know, hey, you're not alone. You're not alone. Even if you did this, we can work through it. You
because
know,
because the love that you have for that person is what, Marty? Unconditional.
unconditional.
That's why you would show up, because you love the person unconditionally, because they weren't born at an infant level running around killing people. So it was easy to love them. It was easy to see them in another light. So you
And
love the person
I could be
unconditionally.
wrong, but
No.
I haven't seen them in the hearings. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be
Yeah.
wrong.
I mean, yeah, we could be, but when we take a look at it from the psychology point of view, parents, love their children unconditionally. They may not like the behavior, they may not like the crime. They are not in agreement with the crime, but they love the person.
But
So
Twizzle,
just
that
based
if
out of
your
that,
child said that to you and they were in jail, would that be enough for you to stay home on the couch and be like, okay, I'll watch you on Zoom? It probably
Well, with
would,
that being said, you guys also work with people that have an addiction to drugs. And
of
from my
course.
understanding, Brian Koberger had an issue with drugs. So there may be some things that went on with his family that was bad when he was doing drugs. You never know.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. It doesn't matter whether
Hey, the
there's a
chat.
drug addict
Hey,
or
chat.
not.
I mean,
They're
we
gonna
get
show up.
what I get. What you're saying. I get what you're saying. I'm
Mm.
talking for me right here. I mean, I'm just saying that it's a different culture. It's a different culture. I'm from the Spanish culture, and my dad is white. And the Spanish culture rallies around their own. If one is sick, all 50 of us are at the hospital, even if it's just for a broken leg or something. And that's how it is with the Spanish culture. So I guess a lot of it has to do with the culture thing. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, you're right. I mean, you're right. But I mean, I think that if his family is not showing him any kind of support whatsoever, that does say volumes. Now, why are they there? Why are they not there? I don't know. But I mean, even what's that? The Casey girl. Her parents were visiting her at in jail. I mean, so there's
Okay,
Casey
hold on,
Anthony.
hold on,
Yeah.
Kate.
yeah,
Hold
Casey
on.
Anthony.
Hold on, I gotta say something right quick. It says Andrea Burkhart reported this on her channel when she was at the court hearing. The parents were in the other room. They were in a separate viewing room. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Then like I said,
Perfect.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not above being wrong.
So
I'm
maybe
Right.
not
they
one of
Okay,
they
those
just were
good.
not
people.
there.
I'm not one of those people that is gonna
They
stand
can't be
on
wrong.
being wrong.
Right.
Right. I'm not above being wrong. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Good.
Good. So they were there.
Okay, well that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good
Uh,
that people can admit when they're wrong. They
Yeah,
should. That's the right thing to do.
yeah,
yeah.
I'm not above being wrong. I mean,
Right.
but I just was basing it on my observation, and
Yeah.
I didn't see them, and I
Exactly.
thought, well, that's weird that there's no family support, but they were in another viewing room, so that makes it better. That makes
And
it
at
Yeah.
this point, all anyone can do is speculate and have their own opinion because they don't know what exactly is truly going on.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 for real. Because I was fixed. I mean, that just whenever we were talking about it, to be very honest, I was sitting here flabbergasted because I was like, "How is this? He doesn't have nobody. Nobody has gone up. That says a lot." Because even when people have gone in the state of Texas, because that's where Carla, I don't know what part of the country you're calling in from, but
I'm from the South, if you can't tell. I'm a Georgia peach.
All
okay,
right.
Georgia. Okay, so here in Texas, girl, we're from Texas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me and Marty know each
We're
other.
from Texas. Yeah.
We're from Texas. So in Texas, right, when the person is on death row, they're about to kill this person off, right? Okay. There's two separate viewing areas for that happen. I can't for the execution to happen. So the family of the person is in one room, and then the victims and press, they're in another room, right? So the family, the victims, don't know if anyone is on the other side of that wall because they do not interact. I mean, to the point that in Huntsville there is two different entrances. They don't even come in the through the same doorway, because they want to keep it very separate, right? So in my mind, and the reason why I'm describing this for everybody is because when we were just talking about it just now, and in my mind I was thinking death row family, from that people show up to the execution, and love their, their person, whoever, is there fixing to die for their crimes or whatever. They show up in that moment, and you mean to tell me that no one is showing up for him right now, and he's not even hadn't even been convicted? That's why I was like, oh my gosh, this is so. That's
That's what
why I
I
got
was
so
thinking
hyped up
too.
Right.
about it, because I was like,
Right.
that speaks volumes, because we know that, at least in Texas, I know this to be a fact. Family members show up to an execution. I mean, they
And
show up. They love that person. So
right. I
that's
can
why I had the
understand
strong.
you.
That's why I had such a strong
Yeah,
reaction, because I was
we
like, that's
we
Right.
strong.
corrected it. We corrected it. We corrected
Oh
it,
my
I,
guys.
I can I can understand you, both of you, feeling that way. I can understand you both having that opinion, but in the same aspect, this is a high profile case, and I'm sure his parents are being harassed. His
Right,
family's being
right.
harassed. I'm sure there's family members that are having problems with employment. There's a
Then his
number of things
sisters,
that are going on with his family also. So
then
they're
his sisters lose
probably
their jobs.
trying, yeah,
No,
yeah,
his sisters lost their jobs, right? Due
right.
to due to
From
this.
my understanding, correct. But yeah,
Oh,
I mean, it's hard on his family also, and if he has involvement in it, then he needs to face judgment. If he has no involvement in it, then he needs to be set free, as everyone should feel. But I'm sure his family loves him, but they don't want to be harassed and bothered either. And I'm sure, how would the victims' families feel seeing Brian Coburg's family in the courtroom, and what kind of reactions would they get? And I'm sure I didn't pronounce his last name correctly, but anyway, that's my point on that.
right.
Yeah,
You're right
yeah,
on that.
that's a good point.
And also,
Yeah.
I was gonna say that if he is innocent, he will be set free. He will be set free. But at this point, the lawyers cannot set him free, other than the
Right,
prosecutor. The prosecutor, the only one that can say, "Hey, we're going to dismiss the charges on Mr. Koberger." The only people that can set him free now are the jurors. That's it. All this information that we're hearing about, and I mean, it's going to get even worse because the suppression hearings are coming, the change of venue hearing coming. You
Hmm.
know,
correct.
all that's coming, and it's going to get worse, and it's going to get uglier. But do not get so caught up in that, because the only people that can set him free at this point is either the prosecuting attorney or the jurors. That's
Well,
it.
personally, in my opinion, I think the reason why the bail was not set was because they had enough evidence against him to see involvement some way, somehow. And they did not want someone that may have had involvement to be out on the streets after a crime like that.
Well, also think of it like this, okay? Think of it like this. Let's say that somebody breaks into your car, and you catch them, and they run off. So when they catch them, they're going to use all the evidence of your witness statement of what you saw. They're going to write that down. They can't make up anything that you said. They can't say that you weren't there when it happened. None of that. All they can use is your statement. Okay, so they take that to the judge and say, "Here's our probable cause. Do you sign off on this?" Okay, yes, there's enough for probable cause to show that this was the guy, that was camera footage, blah blah blah. So,
Right.
and
I
then
mean,
once they arrest the guy, what normally happens is he goes to a preliminary trial. If it's something of that nature, and it goes up to command. But we didn't get the preliminary. We got the grand jury. And people
right.
do not understand how thorough a grand jury is. It is just not people sitting there listening to to evidence. It is people investigating the evidence. A grand jury is about investigating the evidence. Do you understand? I mean, Chad, do you understand what that means? So the grand jurors are still investigating what they're hearing. They're not just listening and then deciding on what they're hearing. They're still asking questions. They're still trying to get clarity. So whenever you hear the grand jury ask for more clarity, that's part of it. It's part of the grand jury. It's not something specific that Bill Thompson didn't want to tell them. They're supposed to ask questions. They're supposed to ask for more clarity. So
And
whenever
to and
being
to be and to be perfectly correct about it, he is not guilty until he is found guilty, and he may be guilty of something. He may have not done it. He may have been involved. No one really knows.
right, right. I mean, to me, that's why I never say the man's guilty.
Exactly.
I don't even say he's innocent until proven guilty because I know none of the evidence other than what is in the PCA, and that was enough to arrest him. There's more that was used to indict him. So there's more evidence that was used and shown to indict him. People think that the PCA, that was the evidence that they used to indict him. No, there's more that the grand jury was shown, and they found it probable to indict him. I mean, a lot of times individuals don't understand the process. So whenever they hear something, they're instantly thinking, well, they're going on the evidence of the PCA. So no,
No.
there's enough evidence. He should be let free.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Marty. You're absolutely right on that. And I think people tend to, confuse that. If this is, especially if this isn't something that, you're just sitting down to watch for entertainment. You're not really, you know, just caught your attention, or what, you tend to have those skewed, opinions because we don't know, how did they even get here, and then another thing to kind of, just think about, just to kind of throw this out there, I mean, he could say, hey, you know what, guys, I did it, but yeah, can you give me a deal? But
Yeah,
because it was such a heinous crime, and because they have all the evidence, the prosecution doesn't have to accept that, and they can be like, no, we're going for the death penalty.
right.
It's we're not satisfied with you just saying that you're guilty and for you just to spend the rest of your life in jail, without the possibility of parole. We want the death penalty.
You're
So I
right.
mean, we don't know if that's even happened. I
You're
mean,
right.
we don't know.
You're right, golf inspector. The grand jury got one sided because the prosecution is the only one at the grand jury, and I think
Mhm.
you know that. So that's why they did get one sided. The defense isn't allowed to be at the grand jury.
Nope,
Um,
they're not.
hearing. So the prosecution presents all the evidence on why he should be indicted based on all the evidence that they have, the witnesses, everything. So
Mhm.
this grand jury saw enough to indict him. Even if they asked for more clarity, they voted, "Hey, there's enough of us to indict him. Let's
Mhm.
move on with it." So they've heard something that none of us have heard or seen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Whatever happened to your friend Marty? I mean, I hate to get off subject, but did he make it okay? Your guest?
He said 8 o'clock, so I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to fill up time, and I don't know if he's going to show, but definitely, guys, I did not catfish you into coming in here for this. Honestly, he told me start up the live, send me the link, and I did, and I've been waiting. If anything, I will reschedule his interview because he is involved in that lifestyle, or he was. He's cleaned up his act, but he's still very thorough with all the. I'm just going to say
Mhm.
it because he's going to talk about Aryan Brotherhood, the Aryan family,
Mhm.
and he's going to talk about that aspect and how they operate and things of that nature. the guy's from Alabama, so
Oh Lord, Alabama.
yeah,
Right
yeah,
up in your neck of the woods,
yeah,
Carla.
Yeah.
Alabama. So how
Well,
are
I hope.
the peaches this time of the year? Are they even in bloom?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And they're um, they're pretty good in Georgia and Florida, but
yeah,
go elsewhere, it's not too good.
yeah.
So yeah, it's usually real juicy and good and fresh, but sometimes you don't pick them when they're supposed to be picked, and they're too hard, and it's
Right,
not
right.
good.
You
But
know, I like peaches, but when I was younger, I used to have a drinking problem, and I used to drink a lot of peach tree schnapps. I don't know if you
oh
know what
yeah,
that is, but I got really sick one night on that stuff, and I've never been able to eat peaches since. I mean, it's just a remembrance that makes me sick to my stomach. You know what I mean?
You have
Something
PTSD.
that I can't overcome.
yeah. You need to seek therapy for those peaches.
Oh,
Indeed, I needed to seek therapy back then for sure.
Well, it was good talking to you guys, and I'm sorry. I thought you were hollering for me to come up there.
Oh,
I
I
tried it
realized,
before, but I couldn't do it.
I realized my mistake after I saw you in the chat. I was like, oh, I wonder if she's gonna think I was talking to her as well. But
yeah.
I've been trying to get you up here. I'm glad that you came up here. You're more than welcome anytime you want to come up here.
Okay, well, I think it was a great discussion. I enjoyed talking to both of you, and I enjoyed having both sides of the issue being looked at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, Carla. You be
Okay,
careful over there in Georgia.
Yeah. Thank you, Carla.
thank you guys. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Yeah, she was so sweet.
Yes,
She was
indeed,
she was she was so sweet. She got put on the
indeed.
spot and she swam. She swam like a champ. So
Yes,
I hope
she
she
did.
I hope she comes back and I hope that she takes me up on it because I'm so interested to see, how law enforcement is looking at it, from the law enforcement and then from like the
Hey,
lawyer
True
point
Crime
of view.
Cult. Yeah, I mean, that's all we can do is go based on our experiences,
Yeah.
because before I got into the therapy sector, before I got into working with law enforcement and parole and probation and all that, I was on the other side of the coin. So I was like a lot of people in the chat that I believed that law enforcement set people up and they were bad and this and that and the other. I didn't trust them, all this because of the experiences that I had with my parents. You know what I mean? So, um, but once I crossed over to the other side of the coin, like you said, the more education that you possess that kind of takes the bias out of you, then
Yeah.
you look at things objectively with no dog in the fight, no
Yeah.
emotional connection, just based on what you're hearing and what you're seeing. Does it add up in your mind?
Yeah, yeah, that's so. Yeah, I mean, because I'm telling you, like yeah, I share the same. I didn't know until I started, going to school and, getting myself into debt is all I've done. But, to learn, personally what my personal biases are and how to work through those.
Right.
In order for me to remain, as fair and consistent, as I can, in my practice, but then that's just, a big part of just learning, even learning and being honest with yourself to say, hey, I do have a bias, when it comes to XYZ, I need to work on that,
Exactly.
so because it's a huge deal. I mean, I want to do some more research and I want you to do some more research because I definitely want to talk and I want to see and the chat, I mean, you guys join us because I want to come up on some time and I want to talk about the Karen Reed case. I'm not going to say too much, I don't want to spoil it for everybody or anything like that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the people that where I have seen it now, let me set the scene for the chat here, Marty. I mean, you know this, but let me set
All
the scene for
right.
the chat. I'm if you don't know, I have breast cancer, and so I'm currently, I'm a warrior. I'm currently fighting it. So I'm currently in the process of radiation, and so and I'm doing that here in Dallas, in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to, UT Southwestern for my radiation. That being said, I'm staying with Candy. My sister's name is Candy, so I'm staying with her friends who are quickly becoming family to me, to be honest. And I'm staying here in their home, right? So I don't have I'm not watching news. And so what I watch is I've been watching a lot of TikToks. So this particular case, I'm learning a lot about it because of TikTok. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, and I don't know if it's in the media, or not in the mainstream media or not, but go to TikTok, just type in, the Karen Reed case, and just dive in and listen, to everything that's going on with that case. But I said all of that just to say, you guys could be sitting here going, it is in the mainstream media. I just don't know if it is or if it isn't, just because of my
Right.
situation, and I don't, I'm not watching, news right now, um, because, well, I can't ask the people that I'm staying with, hey, pay
Yeah.
the cable bill, or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, the Karen Reed case is fascinating to me. It is a lot of, corruption. It's just, it is a movie in the making. And anyways, I guess I'm just out here. You brought me up here on panel, Marty, and I'm just dishing out homework to everybody. But it's
It's fine.
such
Hey,
an
you guys in the
interesting.
chat, if you've enjoyed the stream, please be kind and hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you enjoyed the presentation, there's a library in my channel history that has past cases such as Ted Bundy. I've done the Watts case. Carla and I did the Watts case, and there's some others, and I talk about cartels on the one that I did the other day, and it kind of goes on and on and on. There's some therapy stuff in there. I did one last night on addiction and homelessness, and I'm gonna do a couple on. There's gonna be one that I'm doing, I think, Saturday morning on homeless veterans um that are here in the U.S. that I believe that needs to be brought out and really spoke about because they should not be homeless at all. That's just
No.
my opinion. Um, but nobody should be homeless. I mean, we live in a great country. There should be a way to take care of our own first,
Yeah.
and then kind of help the other people. But that's just my take on it. But I'm gonna
But I,
do a case on that. I'm gonna do the second part of the human trafficking.
mm,
Um,
yeah.
I'm gonna do the second part of the IDAHO4 tomorrow. I'm gonna finish up the interview that we started last night. So if you go down in my page, there's upcoming lives, and there's like six of them. The last one ends in August, so I'm kind of booked up until August. But you never know when I'm going to put up an impromptu live like tonight. And I am going to have my friend up here. I did not catfish y'all. He kind of stood me up, but I'm going to get on him and get him up here. And we're going to talk about the Aryan Brotherhood, and we're going to talk about the Aryan family. We're going to talk about trap houses. We're going to talk about um, drugs and guns and all the good stuff. And I'm sorry that I sound so winded. I just don't feel well at all. I don't know what's wrong with me. But
Well, you
thank
better you better get to feeling better, because I mean, that's the one thing that I like about your channel, is that you talk a lot about, I mean, and this is goes for the chat. You guys have been here, and if this is your first time being here, there's a lot of shenanigans that go on, and tonight was a shenanigan. So I'm happy that people actually stayed and listened to it
Right.
all, and stuff. And I know I always enjoy my time when you invite me to come up, up on the panel and stuff. So yeah, definitely, look forward to participating. I have dyslexia, guys, so it's so hard for me to participate by just being in the chat because I can't type fast enough. By the time I'm typing it up, the conversation has already moved on. But yeah, anytime you want me to come up on panel, just let me know. I,
Yeah,
I
no
I
problem.
absolutely love it. I love it, and especially tonight, and maybe sometime in August, whenever we can set it up, or we can have like you said, a night where, hey, it wasn't scheduled, but let's talk about it. If you get enough interest, I mean, you guys at the chat, you guys have to let Marty know if that's something you want to talk about after you go down the rabbit hole, of that case. If that's something you want to talk about, you gotta come on this channel. You gotta let your voice be heard. You gotta let him know, like, hey, I went down the rabbit hole and I want to talk about this. You know,
Hey,
um,
those of you, there's 47 of you in this chat. Let me see a lot of roosters and a lot of airplanes. I know some of you are watching this on TV, but I want to see the ones in chat. Fly with the roosters and fly with the airplanes. Let's give those two channels some love. Come on, guys. Let me see it. Let me see those airplanes. Let me see those roosters for those channels. Come on. Let
the
me see it. Let me see it. Come on. Show them that we support them, regardless if they're not part of the platform right now. We support them. We're not standing for any of the ignorant that's been brought out against them, but we're standing as a true crime community because they do some good work as far as true crime. So if y'all don't want to do that, that's fine. But hopefully in time you change your mind because, like I said, he who liveth without sin cast the first stone, and none of us are able to cast that first stone. And even if you're not religious or you're not biblical or anything like that, none of us live a perfect life. We all make mistakes. We all we all have those moments where we say things out of anger that we wish that we wouldn't have said, or we have belief systems that we've challenged on our own, and whenever we're approached, we stick behind our words. I mean, that doesn't make somebody a certain thing because by you calling them a name like that, that means that you're being the same thing that you're accusing them of being. So if you're retaliating by calling somebody a name that is just as detrimental as what you are accusing them of being, two wrongs don't make a right. That's all I got to say. So I hope you enjoyed the stream. Carla, we support you. And
yes.
the other Carla, thank you so much for being up here. You were a pleasure. You finally figured it out how to get up here. So you're more than welcome anytime. And anybody else who wants to come up on panel next time, you're more than welcome. Um, I'm gonna cue the music, guys, because I'm gonna go to bed. I'm gonna drink some water and go to bed. Y'all have a good evening. I will see you tomorrow night, God willing. Take care.